some small things that you can set yourself to try to achieve are maybe you want to include one more serving of vegetables a day, or you want to try to have something green on your plate at dinner always.
Hi everybody, welcome to Nutrition 101. This is our very first session with Sheridan Bruins and our athletic team. We got Rory here, we got Olivia. They have prepared a wonderful presentation for us. For everyone that's rolling in right now, thanks so much for joining, for being part of this. I think eating at home can be a bit tricky if there's a tub of ice cream lying around, but you know, we're here to get ourselves straight. I'll hand it off to you guys. And again, this is going to be recorded, and we also welcome any kind of conversation or question throughout the entire event and a chance to win a prize.
Awesome.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you. Olivia is going to take it away. But for those in the Zoom call here, if you do have any questions, you can either raise your hand or put it in the chat. And then I'll try and find a good time to ask Olivia. So if we don't get to it during the presentation, we have a small amount of time at the end of it to ask questions then. Take it away.
All right. So, hi everybody. I am so excited to have this opportunity to share some simple nutrition tips and tricks that will hopefully help you to stay healthy, staying at home this school year. So I do just have some notes down here, so if you see me looking down and up, that's what I'm doing. But my name is Olivia Hardy. I am a registered nutritionist. I did complete my Bachelor of Science studying nutrition and dietetics at Western University. And then I actually continued my studies to study a little bit more of a holistic approach to nutrition at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. So I do have like the dietetic background of nutrition, and then I also have a more holistic approach to nutrition as well. I'm now practicing privately at a clinic here in London, and I do co-own a small gym here in London where I also practice my nutrition. So we're gonna jump right into our first slide here. It's going to be a lot of information today, so hopefully you can take something away from it. I'm not sure if I do that, what you see. Okay. So before we dive into a bunch of tips and tricks, I think it's crucial to understand the why. So why is nutrition even important to discuss, and how does nutrition actually affect your studies? So research has shown that students are able to learn better when they are well nourished. So eating healthy meals has actually been linked to higher grades, better memory and alertness, and faster information processing. So your nutrition actually does affect your ability to study and retain information and learn new things quite a bit. So it is quite important to learn a little bit about. Nutrition actually also has an impact on your moods and behaviors. And also nutrition is important to focus on, especially right now, because good nutrition practice plays a really important role in your immune system. And we know right now, we all want to be as healthy as possible. So our nutrition plays a role in our body's defense mechanisms and their ability to be strong. Okay, so let's dive into some nutrition basics to get us started. So I'm going to move to the next slide here. So some of you may have heard the term macronutrients before. This term refers to three categories of foods: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So the prefix macro actually means large or big. So these are your big nutrients. And these three categories are where we actually get energy from our foods from. So carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are macronutrients, and kind of the way that I like to group foods together to make things simple. So we'll talk about carbohydrates first, just to give you a little bit more about what they are, why we use, or how our body uses them, and what foods actually provide us with carbohydrate. So carbohydrates are our body's and our brain's preferred and main source of fuel or energy. So it is suggested that the majority of our daily energy intake is coming from foods that provide us with carbohydrates. So most people will think of grain products or starchy vegetables when they hear the word carbohydrates. So foods like bread, pasta, potatoes. And while yes, these are wonderful sources of carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables are also considered carbohydrate foods. So when we're choosing, oh, also just a side note, when we are choosing to incorporate grain products into our diet as a source of carbohydrate, we do want to choose a whole grain source if we can. That's just a little side note. But yes, carbohydrates are very important. I know that there's a lot of buzz around, oh, carbohydrates maybe aren't the best. They are. Your body needs them. We can just choose good sources of carbohydrates versus poor sources of carbohydrates. So grains, starchy vegetables, all other vegetables and fruits, wonderful sources of carbohydrates. They're important. We need to be eating them. So the next category is, or that I'm going to talk about, is proteins. This is also an incredibly crucial nutrient. It's important for maintaining lean muscle mass, which drives our metabolism. It's important for our body to maintain structural integrity, so for us to stay nice and strong, because it plays a huge role in the build and repair of our body's tissues. And lastly, and probably most importantly, like I mentioned in the previous slide, currently, is protein's role in our body's ability to fight viral and bacterial infections. So our immune system's powerhouses, such as antibodies, which are the things that help us fight infections, they rely heavily on protein in the diet. So protein is also very important, and food sources of proteins are going to be things like meat, fish, certain dairy product like Greek yogurt or cottage cheese, and then plant sources of protein such as beans, legumes, things like lentils, tofu, and soy product. If that's something you include in your diet, those are great places to find protein. I don't know if I mentioned eggs as well. So you can get protein from lots of different foods. And then our last macronutrient that I want to talk about is fat. So dietary fat is different than body fat, and we do need to be consuming healthy sources of fats. It plays a huge role in the production of healthy hormones in the body. Healthy fats help keep our heart healthy, our brain healthy, not just our brain's ability to think and retain information, but also our emotional health, our mental health. Healthy fats can be very supportive of good mental health and emotional health. And they also help regulate the amount of inflammation that we have in the body. And we want to minimize inflammation in the body because too much inflammation in the body can lead to disease. So inflammation we do want to keep under control. So healthy sources of dietary fat are fatty fish, so things like salmon, awesome to incorporate if you can, avocados, dairy product again, nuts and seeds. A lot of time people will think that peanut butter falls under the protein category. It's actually a really good source of fat. So anything that's nut or seed or made from those things is going to be more of a healthy fat source for you. And then oils can also be a great source of healthy fat, or dressings and things made with oils. So coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil, flaxseed oil, I know those are kind of fancier oils, but any oil, the only oil that I suggest kind of steering clear of, if you can, is hydrogenated vegetable oils and canola oils. These oils are not naturally occurring, so they are, the body sees them as kind of what is this thing? And it actually increases the amount of inflammation we have in the body and doesn't do great things for us. So if we can avoid those oils, those would be the ones that I would say to kind of steer clear of. So again, I know that's a lot. That's kind of what a carbohydrate is, a protein is, a fat is in a nutshell, where you can find them in foods, and why we should be focusing on those things to have in our diet. Now it's important to remember everybody's different, so different individuals will thrive off of a different macronutrient breakdown. So the amount of carbs, the amount of protein, and the amount of fat that they're having in their diet in a day, it'll vary slightly person to person, but Canada's Food Guide recommends that about 45 to 65% of your daily energy intake is coming from carbohydrate foods. So like I said, a majority of what you're eating in your day ideally is coming from carbohydrate foods. 10 to 35% is coming from protein foods, and then 20 to 35% is coming from fats. So again, there's that big percentage, like 10 to 35, because everybody will be a little bit different, but that's kind of the range that is recommended. I typically suggest that your main meals, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, those meals have a source of each carbohydrate, protein, and fat represented on your plate. So a good resource on how to make a good meal, or what your plate should look like, there's actually something called My Healthy Plate. In my office at the clinic, I have an actual plate that has it broken up like this so I can show clients. But half your plate, actually this photo on this slide is a good representation as well. So half of your plate, we want to have fruits or vegetables there. A quarter of our plate, we want our grains or starchy vegetables. And then the last quarter of our plate will be our protein food. And usually our healthy fats are incorporated into meals with the healthy oils we're cooking with, or maybe we're putting a little bit of cheese on there, or we're using a dressing on our salads. So this is a good representation of what a healthy plate for a main meal could look like. Okay, maybe I don't know if I saw some questions coming in. Is this a good place to pause?
Yes, there was a good question. You were talking about the different types of oils.
Yes.
And Sean was wondering if canola oil that you buy at the store, is that recommended? It doesn't say if it's hydrogenated.
Right. So canola oil is one that I don't prefer you use, because canola oil, there's no canola plant. It's actually just like a fabricated oil, a man-made oil. So again, the body doesn't really recognize it. So it's not the best. Of course, if you're in a pinch and you've got that in the house, you can use it. But I do suggest using like an olive oil over a canola oil if you're using it to cook, or even coconut oil. Those things are a little bit better for you. Was that it for questions so far? All
That was the only one so far.
Awesome. All right. So let's move on to the next slide. All right. So working both computers here. Okay. So now that we've kind of covered a few basics, let's talk about some ways we can actually plan and what types of lists we can make in order to improve our nutrition. So as a busy student, I know it can be easy to let yourself run on empty and forget to care for you and your health. Trust me, I've been there. I was at university for 5 years on my own, and it was quite a bit of a learning curve when you move away from home and you got to do your own thing. So I've been there. I know how busy it can get, how overwhelming it can get, but let's try to, I'm going to teach you maybe a few things that you can incorporate that are simple, some systems you might be able to put in place. So making small changes to nutrition and focusing on nourishing yourself is one act of self-care you can begin to practice. So how can we put some simple systems into place, like I said, to help us get started? So making a plan. If you fail to plan, then plan to fail. I know that might seem like a little bit of a harsh quote, but it is the truth. Let's go over a few different tools that maybe you could use to create a plan, and see if any of these seem like something that you might be able to incorporate into your life. So one thing that you could do is creating your own meal builder resource. So this will allow you to create balanced meals simply and quickly. If you're someone who likes to make meals on the fly, then this is a tool for you. So Now that we do know a bit more about carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and what foods fall under those categories, what you could do is take a piece of paper, make those headings, so carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and then under each heading, list all the foods that you already incorporate or foods that you know that you like that will cover that category, carbs, proteins, and fats. So for example, what I mean is under the carbohydrate, let's say if I was doing this myself, under the carbohydrate heading, I might put oats, I might put whole grain bread, sweet potatoes, apples, bananas, and then a bunch of vegetables, spinach, zucchini, whatever you like. And then I might move over to my protein heading. So the protein heading, I might put chicken, ground turkey, eggs, Greek yogurt, beans, and then under my fat heading, I might put peanut butter, almonds, avocados, cheese, olive oil, whatever kind of foods that you already incorporate or that you like, put those all down. So now, once that you have those all down on a piece of paper, you've made your meal building resource. That's it. So you can laminate it, put it on your fridge. Sometimes I'll take a picture of it on my phone, so I've always got it with me. So now the way that you use it is, like I mentioned in the last slide, it's ideal to have each category represented on your plate for your main meals, at least. So now you can look at this resource and say, okay, so I'm going to have oats and an apple for my carbohydrates. Let's say I'm making a breakfast meal. I mean, you could eat breakfast for any meal, but typical breakfast food meal. I'm gonna have eggs for my protein. The egg yolk actually counts as healthy fat, so I've got some fats there represented already, but I might also add some peanut butter to my oatmeal. I do now have carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. I just picked one from each column or a couple from each column. Boom, done. I have an awesome balanced meal. Okay, so that's one list or resource you can build for yourself to have. Moving on from that, let's talk a little bit about meal prepping, because that can also be very beneficial, especially if you're super busy. You can dedicate a little bit of time to meal prep, and then you're setting yourself up for success during the week or whenever you plan to do it. So first thing, I would choose however many times a week you'd like to meal prep. Choose a day, stick to that day, put it in your calendar, make yourself a reminder that this is the day I'm gonna do this. So typically I see the most successful clients choose a weekend day and then a mid-week day. So for example, a Sunday and a Thursday. The reason that we typically choose 2 days a week is because most foods only last 4 to 5 days in the fridge, or they only last that long because you're eating them. So you need to meal prep a second time. So for meal prep, I would suggest every time you meal prep, you're definitely going to be spending 1 to 2 hours doing this. So make sure you pick a day where you have that time, put on some music, get meal prepping, get yourself ready to go. So I would choose one main big recipe that you can cook to have, portion it out in different containers that you can eat for lunches or dinners. So for example, maybe I'm making a chili. So I'm gonna make a big a big potted chili, and I'm gonna portion that up into different containers, put it in the fridge. And then I'm also going to, another thing I suggest is picking 2 snacks and making 5 of each. So maybe I'm gonna do my one snack as an apple and some like mixed nuts, almonds, cashews, whatever. That's my one snack, so I'm going to make a couple of those in the fridge ready to go. I'm gonna have an apple on top of my container with the nuts, good to go. And then my second snack, maybe I'm gonna choose some portioned hummus. You can get hummus already portioned, or you can buy a bigger tub, whichever is more cost effective. Divvy it up, and I'm gonna cut up raw vegetables, portion those up, ready to go. Okay, so if you have these things ready to go and portioned, you're more likely to grab those things than, oh my gosh, I'm hungry, I'm so hungry, I don't have time to cook something, I don't want to go buy something. So usually you'll reach for whatever's quick and easy, right? So if you have these things ready to go, That's very quick and easy for you to grab and enjoy. But another thing you could do is batch cooking staple foods. So if you're somebody who, like, let's say you're gonna have rice a lot that week, just make a big bunch of rice, put it in the fridge. Or if you like potatoes, cut up, roast a bunch of potatoes, have those ready to go. And then once you have those things ready, like let's say you even cook a whole chicken, or you get a chicken already cooked, a whole chicken at the grocery store, just divvy it up, put it in little containers, ready to go. Okay, so you can use your meal building resource then too, if you just have like rice ready in the fridge, some protein ready in the fridge, and some roasted veggies ready in the fridge. Use your meal builder resource, throw those things together. You have an awesome balanced meal. So yes, it does take a little bit of time to meal prep, but it's well worth it for the time it saves you during the week. Do we have a few questions before we go on to grocery shopping?
Yeah, there are a few questions. I'll start with the last one here.
Okay.
Christopher asked, well, he stated, I've heard some people try to work up to drinking as much water as possible in a day. I've seen a YouTube video where someone works up to drinking a gallon of water a day. Pros or cons of lots of water?
Great question. And we are going to talk about water in a little bit, but I will just jump into it now. So for water, it is suggested that you drink half your body weight in ounces of water. So just to make that kind of simple for our brains, let's just say somebody is, just for quick math's sake, 100 pounds. Half of that is 50. So they should be drinking about 50 ounces of water a day. And then just to put that into another way of thinking, so this water bottle, this is what I use. I know, super special. It's 32 ounces. So about 2 of these would be what like somebody who's 100 pounds should drink. But I will say, if you are eating a bunch of whole foods like fruits and vegetables, those do contain a lot of water as well. So I know it sounds gross, but if you monitor your urine color, that gives you a really good indication of your hydration level. But being hydrated is definitely important for your ability to focus, for your brain to work properly in general. So yes, water is important. It's not necessary to drown yourself in water. Your body will tell you if you're dehydrated, but yeah, so at least half your, I drink personally I try to drink 3 of these a day. Okay, so that's that. Are there other questions?
Yeah, there was one specific to a deep fryer, and it goes back to when we were speaking about oils. Mm-hmm. Would sunflower oil be recommended for deep fryer use? I'm not sure.
Good question. So definitely you can't use olive oil to deep fry. There's certain smoke points of oils. So I'm not exactly sure on the exact smoke point of sunflower oil. So I would have to look that up or look into that for you, but that would be an okay oil in general to use because it's from sunflower seeds. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure about the deep frying and the temperature it can heat up to. So you might have to look into that one after.
And that's it for now.
Okay, awesome. Moving on. So let's talk about grocery shopping and grocery shopping lists. So I like to create grocery shopping lists with headings. As you can probably tell, I do like lists. I make a lot of lists. So I make my lists with different headings that group foods together, kind of the way the grocery store flows or the way that the grocery store groups foods together. So for example, my headings could be meats and fish, and then I'm gonna have produce, I'm gonna have dairy, frozen foods, aisle foods, okay? So then when you put the foods that you're grocery shopping for under those headings, you're able to boogie on through the grocery store pretty simply and organized so that you don't end up impulse buying or buying things that you really don't need. So having, oh, I'm on the wrong part here. So yeah, so making a grocery list is important. But now let's take grocery shopping one step further. So let's say you have your list now we're at the store. How can I make informed decisions on the products that I'm purchasing? So reading a food label can be beneficial. Not only is the portions of the foods that we're eating in our day important, like the quantity of food, when we talk back to the amount of carbs, proteins, and fats we're eating, but the quality of the foods that we're choosing is also important. So I like to say, let's choose nutrient-dense foods, which means these foods have a lot more nutrition to them beyond the carb, the protein, or the fat. We won't get into too much detail, but they're giving you something else, some vitamins, some minerals, whatever it may be. And usually those foods that are very nutrient dense or whole foods, they don't require food labels. For example, like a red pepper, it's just red pepper. The only ingredient is red pepper. So they're not going to need to food label that. But if you are buying packaged products, then yes, there is going to be a food label, and there are some things we can look out for or things that we can read to make sure we're making a really good choice for ourselves. So when the first thing that I would say is when you look at a product on the very front, sometimes they will make some marketing claims. For example, this product is fat-free, or it's gluten-free, or there's no trans fats, or whatever it may be. Usually I just say, don't look at those, kind of move past them. They are just marketing tools, and a lot of the times they're misleading. So for example, I once saw a bag of white sugar labeled as fat-free. There shouldn't be, like, sugar doesn't have fat in it to begin with. So it's not like they took the fat out and now it's a wonderful product. It's still sugar. That would be like having a water bottle and saying, oh, this water's fat-free. Well, yeah, of course it is. It should be. But yes, or even things like certain chips will say no trans fat. But they can get sneaky with those, because if the serving size that they're suggesting on the food label on the back has less than 5 grams or milligrams, I'm not exactly sure the unit of measure, but less than that per serving size, which maybe is only like 5 chips, then they can say that there's no trans fats at all. So don't look at the marketing claims, just flip it around to wherever that food label is, and that's where you should start. And some things that we can look for. So number 1, identify the serving size that they're suggesting. So like I said in that example of the chips, most chip bags will say like for 12 chips, or even crackers, it'll be like for 4 crackers. So make sure that you know what the information you're reading for what size of or what serving size that's talking to. Yeah, so after you identify the serving size, which will be right at the top of the food label, usually bolded, then I would move on to look at the amount of sugar that's in that product. So if it's in a package and it has a food label, whatever the sugar amount is referring to added sugar most of the time. If you're looking like at an apple, that's naturally occurring sugar, that's wonderful, we love that. If it's added, processed, refined sugar, something we need to be a little bit more mindful of. Doesn't mean we can't have any of it, we just need to be more mindful of it. So if you look at, I'm just going to give you another example. Let's say we're looking at a can of Coke, just one of those small cans of Coca-Cola. In one of those, there is 39 grams of sugar. And just for perspective, if you divide that number by 4, that's how many teaspoons, so like a small teaspoon of added sugar is in that product. So a small can of Coca-Cola has 39, let's just round it up to 40 grams of sugar, again for simple math. We divide that by 4, there's about 10 teaspoons of added sugar in that product, okay? And what is recommended is that we try not to exceed 20 teaspoons of added sugar in our day. Of course, if we're below that, wonderful. We really want to have the least amount of added sugars that we can. But if we are including packaged products, we want to try to stay below 20 teaspoons of added sugar. So if you have 2 cans of Coca-Cola, you're done. Your added sugars for the day, you've maxed if you're sticking to that guideline. So sugar, of course, we want to be mindful of. I'm sure you all know why. And then the other thing that we can look at is the fats that are in that product. So on each food label, there will be carbohydrates bolded. Under carbohydrates, there will usually be two other categories. Fiber, which is awesome. We want lots of fiber. And then under that will be the sugar. So that sugar is the added sugars. Then you'll have protein bolded. There's no categories below protein, but then there's fat bolded, and there's usually about 2 to 3 categories under that. So we want to look at the amount of saturated fats and trans fats. Those are the two we want to kind of have less of. And then saturated fats, or sorry, unsaturated fats are the ones that we want to have more of. Those are more of our healthy fats. Okay, so you can take a look at those if you're interested to see if there is quite a bit of saturated or trans fats. Maybe we can make a better choice, choose a different food product there instead. So that's kind of the food label. And then below the food label, where it breaks down all of that, carbs, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, yada, yada. Also one thing I'll mention is the percent daily value that they have on there. It'll say like a percent sign and then DB. Don't even worry about those, because those are based off of a general 2,000 calorie diet, which not everybody follows. So those are kind of like a guideline, like that, okay, there's maybe quite a bit of vitamin A or whatever, but not necessary to get looking at those numbers. That's just a side. But the last thing we can look at, and might be the one tool or thing you do look at, is the ingredient list. So if we're looking at the ingredient list, they list the ingredients from what's most in that product to what's least in that product. So if we're seeing sugar as the first ingredient, maybe we can make a better choice. Or if there's ingredients that you just can't pronounce or you don't know what the heck they are, most likely they're chemicals or a fancy word for sugar. So again, the smaller the ingredient list, the more we can understand what those ingredients are, the better. So again, I know that's a lot, and I think I saw some other questions, so maybe we can pause.
I'm thinking maybe we'll jump to these questions at the end.
Okay.
So if you want to keep going, but I have them all recorded, so for everyone who's asked, don't worry.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move on. So now that we have some new ideas for planning, we've talked about grocery shopping a lot, let's kind of tackle some other common challenges you may face revolving around your nutrition. So a common challenge I know, because I was there as a student, is poor meal timing. So what I mean by that is maybe you get really busy during the day and you forget to eat, or you're skipping meals. So now you're either under-fueling yourself by the end of the day, or you're eating at strange times late into the night, or now we're overindulging, and none of these things are a part of a healthy routine, and it can create a vicious cycle for ourselves. So it sounds silly, but I oftentimes get clients to set alarms on their phone or reminders. If there's someone who, even if they're somebody who has a full-time job, that they get too busy and they forget to eat, putting those alarms or reminders in your phone every 2 to 4 hours, depending on how you like to eat throughout your day, can just remind you, oh yeah, I better go have something and refuel. So that's one thing you could do. And then another common challenge is, like everything else, food costs money. And we know that students' budgets are a little bit tighter. Again, I know I was there. So I suggest picking some staple foods that you can incorporate that are quite inexpensive. Some ideas of these foods might be like quick oats, super cost effective. You can get quite a lot for a little cost. Eggs are awesome, super good for you to incorporate if you can eat eggs. Rice is awesome. Of course, then if you want to make an even better choice, brown rice or another type of rice, but white rice is fine too. Canned beans, those things are like pretty inexpensive. You can stock up on those, have those, and incorporate them into different meals. in a bunch of different ways. And then frozen fruits and vegetables, those are also awesome. They still have all the nutrition in them. They're just a little bit more convenient. They're usually already cut for you. All you got to do is boil them or heat them up, however, and you're good to go. And then in terms of proteins, what I've found to be the best options, I know at my grocery store, they have like ground turkey rolls. It's like $10 for 5 of them, which is like wonderful. And then also you can either purchase a pre-cooked whole chicken, just take it all off the bone and put that ready to go. You can use those eggs you purchase, hard boil them. Like those would probably be the best inexpensive bulk foods or things that you can have that are staples in your diet that can keep you healthy from home, or they'll go a long way. And then some other common challenges we touched on in the previous slides in detail were the meal prep, planning ahead, and then improved convenience of healthy foods for you, okay? So remember, if you plan, I'm gonna mess this up. If you fail to plan, plan to fail. Did I say that right? Yes. Okay, so making a good plan for yourself, sticking to it, those are the things that are gonna help you to be successful with this. But it is important to remember that small changes always add up to big results over time. So it doesn't all have to happen at once. You can stick to one small goal a week or a month, and then think of what you can accomplish by the end of the year. Because these are not just things that you should be doing as a student, these are things that you can continue to lead a healthy lifestyle after. So some small goals, even if you are gonna start planning or meal prepping, some small things that you can set yourself to try to achieve are, maybe you want to include 1 more serving of vegetables a day, or you want to try to have something green on your plate at dinner always, or you want to practice being more mindful when you're eating. So am I eating slowly? Am I distracted when I eat? What's my environment like? Am I truly authentically hungry? Do I chew my food well? Am I eating alone? All those things. And then the other things that you could do, small changes, are the things we talked about, like meal prep or starting to practice writing those lists. So there's a bunch of little different goals and things you can set for yourself to help start to improve your nutrition practices. And then if we take a completely holistic approach to creating a healthy routine while you're in school, it can be beneficial to look at 3 other categories. So water was one of them, which we kind of touched on already. Staying hydrated is super important. Poor hydration affects your mental performance and learning ability by reducing the brain's ability to transmit and receive information. So being dehydrated is not a good thing, especially if you're trying to be learning new things. Use a water bottle, bring it with you always, have it nearby. Like I said, I just have this funky one. It's nothing special, but it does the trick. If you want to get yourself a super pretty one, whatever, or whatever you like, whatever works for you. Number 2, sleep. Sleep is so important. Getting 7 or more hours is the recommendation. When we sleep, we're consolidating the memories, which is essential for learning new information, and also being tired is going to affect your ability to focus. So prioritizing sleep is actually quite important. Lack of sleep also can be increasing if you already maybe have a little bit of anxiety. Not having enough sleep can actually amplify those things too. So sleep is really important to prioritize. And lastly, movement. If you can try to get at least 10 minutes of movement in your day, whether it's taking a break every half an hour to do 3 jumping jacks or go for a walk for 10 minutes, whatever it is, that can be very helpful as well, just to improve your mood, reduce stress, and get things flowing. Okay, so that's that. I know that's a ton of information. And so even if you take one small thing away from today, I'm happy. I'll feel like we accomplished something. But, and I know that you're going to have a more in-depth chat on supplements coming up in this series. But if I were to give you my top 2 recommendations, that would be a multivitamin. A multivitamin is just going to cover your bases in terms of, we didn't talk about it in detail, but your micronutrients refers to your vitamins and minerals. And these things are really important for making sure your body is functioning properly and all the things that need to happen are happening properly. And it is recommended to get 7 to 8 servings of fruits and vegetables in a day, which can be challenging. So taking a multivitamin will just cover your bases and make sure that everything is working smoothly. And then lastly, or your number 2, my number 2 suggestion is an omega-3s or a fish oil supplement. It's awesome for supporting your brain, your heart, regulating that inflammation. So those would be my top 2. If you're able to supplement and you want to take your nutrition to the next level, those would be awesome. And then if you are looking for some sound nutrition advice that you can access from home, I would suggest Canada's food guidelines. They have changed recently to provide more beneficial materials, which is great. And other than that, if you do have specific nutrition concerns, maybe you have a certain condition or you eat a certain way and you need some more guidance, I would suggest seeking out a registered nutritionist or dietitian near you. A lot of things are online now, so you could probably even access somebody straight from home if you have the resources for that. So yeah, invest in your health. You have one body, one home for this life, so make sure you're taking care of it and taking care of yourself. And that's kind of all I got for you guys. So now we can talk some questions or take some questions.
Perfect. That was some great information.
A lot.
I have a few questions here, and then I'm going to encourage those here to ask more questions in the chat if you have them.
Awesome.
The one comment was, the sugar in juice is not from concentrate. Is that healthy?
That's not from concentrate. So if you're talking like a fruit juice, most of the time, then you will see on the food label, like, so yes, the sugar that's on there is still added sugar. So I would still be mindful of that. But if it's like a smoothie drink, a lot of the times that sugar is coming from whatever like fruit and stuff that they've put in there. So yes, that might be naturally occurring sugar. But most of the time I don't suggest juices or smoothies pre-made in places because you don't know what they're adding to it. Make one at home if you'd like, especially because if you're doing like fruits and vegetable juices, they've actually taken out all the fiber from those fruits and vegetables. So now we have no control for that sugar that's going into the bloodstream, that we're going to have a huge sugar spike. So it is better to make those things at home, like with the whole blueberries. So now that the skin's still in there, we still got the fiber. But yeah, that would refer still to like added sugars for the most part.
Okay, and then the next question we had was, and I think this might go back to the Canadian food guidelines, but the average amount of protein for a day.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know on here from this chat, like what, if you're male, female, how your total calories for the whole day is. But would you just recommend looking it up on the Canadian food guideline? Yeah,
I'd recommend looking it up there. You do want it to be making up about 10 to 35% of your intake in the day, which I know is a wide range. So again, yeah, it depends on the person, what your goals are, what your height is, what your weight is, all those things go into that. So it's hard to give a specific answer.
And I did put the link in the chat for those that are still looking at the chat, that you can find that. Another question we had, and it was referring to meal prep. How bad are those snack foods and how often should they be consumed? I'm guilty of this one, I think.
Are you referring to like granola bars and things as snack foods, or you mean like the snacks that you're preparing?
I think it was a little bit of both.
Okay, so I mean, if you're having like an apple and some nuts, that's an awesome snack. Remember, if you're eating like whole foods, there's never really a problem with that. If you are like mindlessly snacking on chips and things like that, that's when we kind of want to change those behaviors a little bit. But yeah, if it's like hummus and vegetables and a fruit and nuts, like who am I to say, like that's wonderful. You can snack on that if you like.
And another question we had was, is there a good meal planner or tracker app? And I do want to say that that will be a session in a few weeks, but is there one you'd recommend just now?
Yeah, awesome. So if you're somebody who likes pen and paper, there are a lot, like just on Google, just type up like food tracker and it'll give you, there's a bunch of resources there. But if you want an app, I personally use MyFitnessPal or the Fitbit app. I've recently been using the Fitbit app just because I have a Fitbit device, so they talk with all that information. But those two are my top two that I recommend even to clients because they're pretty user friendly. You're able to put in custom like recipes and things. So those are awesome. I really like tracking tools because it can give you a good look at what you're having in your day in terms of your carbs, your proteins, your fats, how that's broken down, how much fiber am I having, how much sugar am I having. So it is a really great tool to have kind of an overview look at what your day actually looks like. So really recommend those.
And if I can add to that, these apps are going to be fairly similar. And what Olivia just alluded to is they're tracker apps. So you still need to know the general range that you should be in because you're just tracking the food that you are. So you need to take the information that Olivia just shared and kind of apply it to these tracker apps that you have. And I'm pretty sure like MyFitnessPal is free.
Yeah.
So it's a good one to have. But you need to know and have a little bit of background, and that's what this session's for.
Yeah.
And the last one, Christopher just asked one just now in the chat. It's about meal replacements.
Okay.
If you just want to speak about meal replacements quickly.
Sure. Meal replacements can be like great, especially if you are somebody who's busy on the go. It's really convenient. We just need to be looking at the ingredients list. So there's always products that are better than others. So in terms of a specific recommendation when it comes to what type of meal replacement, I'm not too familiar with the different brands, but I know that there's a lot of like companies that sell them. So they can be good. There is a place for them in your day for sure. We obviously want to be consuming whole foods first, but if that's going to help you to stay nourished and fueled, and that's a solution that works for you, wonderful. Just kind of do a little bit of looking at the ingredients and making sure there's nothing in there that's, especially if it's something you're going to be incorporating a lot in your diet, then we want to make sure that the ingredients are good.
Okay, there's still a chance here if anyone has a question. I'll just make a note here. I just added my email because I was going to pick a prize winner. And the prize is going to be this string bag here, water bottle, and this is actually a Stress Bruin Bear.
Ooh.
But there's a good amount of people on here that if you just want to send me an email to the email I just provided, and we'll make arrangements for you to get the prize out of me delivering, or if you happen to live on campus, to come by. But I don't want people to post their address here. Please email me and we'll set up a time to communicate about that. Now, is there any more questions?
Awesome. I think we're good. Oh, there might be.
Okay, so Chris is just hoping to discuss the supplements a little bit more. Maybe I'll go back to his original question. Can they be used in place of these occasionally, or what are they actually giving you compared to the three categories you mentioned before?
The meal replacements?
Yeah.
So if it is truly a meal replacement, it's going to have a good amount of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. If it's just like a protein powder, that's just giving you protein. That's just a protein supplement. So if you really want a meal replacement, it's going to have about 30 to 40 grams of carbs, 20 to 30 grams of protein, and like at least 10 grams of fat to make it a good meal replacement. Like you're replacing a whole meal, so it's got to have those things in there. It should be around 300 to 400 calories. Again, if it's just a protein powder, that is not a meal replacement. You need to have other things with that. Protein powder is a supplement that you can use at meals with other things, or it can be like a recovery drink after the gym. But yeah, so meal replacement, protein powder, two different things for sure. Did that answer a little bit more? You can even get ones with like greens added to it. They don't taste great in my opinion, but you can do that.
I've definitely tried those.
Yeah, he said
Yeah.
that's good.
Okay, good. Yay.
Cool. Well, that is the end of our very first Nutrition 101 event online. Thanks so much, everybody, that you guys have been very active throughout the chat. So thanks so much. I'm sure Olivia and Rory really appreciate that. But tune in for the week after next week. So every other Monday, we're doing these Nutrition 101s with different subheadings. And then every Wednesday and Thursday, get yourself active with yoga and fitness. So you're more than welcome to go on and check out our SSU website to sign up and get the Zoom links on there too. But I'd like to say thank you so much, Olivia and Rory from the Athletics. Thanks so much for everything. And yeah, I hope to see you guys soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Olivia.